Hello and welcome to A Pinch of Zest, our latest podcast series that looks to add a little something extra to how you better support your colleagues. My name is Josh Sweetman-LeMay and I'll be your host for our first episode, where we will dive deeper into neurodiversity in the workplace, how it impacts employees and what tools are available for both employees and employers alike. I'm delighted to be joined by today's panel, who will not only give us a first-hand account of what it's like to suffer from a neurological difference, but also educate on processes that should be put in place and how to cater for diverse talent. Firstly, it's a pleasure to introduce Lee Godwin, Global Chief Operations Manager at Emplomind. Lee, can you just tell a little bit about yourself and Emplomind?
Thanks, Josh. Well, nice to be here today. I really appreciate you inviting me in to talk a little bit more about this really, really important subject. So a little bit of introduction to myself, and then I'll touch on Emplomind and what we do. So yeah, my name's Lee Godwin. I'm Chief Operations Officer for Emplomind. My background is 20 years in kind of commercial roles. Took a bit of a shift in direction around 4 or 5 years ago through to personal circumstances. My sister actually looked to take her life. So that was a moment for me where I kind of sat back and reflected on the work I was doing, the value I was seeing in the conversations I was having, and really took me down a bit of a rabbit hole and why I'm in front of you all today, I guess, right? So that's a little bit on me. In terms of how I then action that within the workplace and my day-to-day, Emplomind, we go into organisations and we really do two things. We do a lot of educational work and on-demand support. And that's all around ensuring that we can help create really inclusive, healthy and happy environments.
That's brilliant. And it's really nice of you to join us obviously today. And am I right? Delighted to be joined by someone who we've had. Jake, how long have we known each other? Jake Jones. We've known each other for 20 years, played for the same football team, worked in retail when we were both 16, 17. Jake, it's delightful for you to join us today. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for having me on. Really, really pleased that I could come on and talk about, subject important to me, but also a subject that's grown a bit of traction very recently, which is a good thing. But yeah, no, certainly we've known each other since, sort of like 17, 18. You were in Portsmouth, I think, at the time. I came down for university. We ended up playing football as well, Sunday League football. We won a trophy. I showed you that photo when we first got here. We did the same course as well, just at different universities. Yeah. So we've known each other a long, long time. So yeah, very good to obviously see you again. Obviously as well as be here and try and shed some light on how some experiences, what they may feel like and what they may look like in the workplace.
No, I really appreciate being here. Before we get started, I just want to explain what neurodiversity is. This is taken from an NHS description, so I'll read it word for word. Neurodiversity refers to the different ways a person's brain processes information. It's an umbrella term used to describe a number of these variations, and it is estimated that around 1 in 7 people in the UK have some kind of neurodiverse difference. Being neurodiverse does not correlate with low intelligence. Many people with neurodifferences are highly intelligent. People who are neurodiverse often think about and see the world differently, making them a huge asset to any team that wants to improve how they do things and deliver excellent patient care or services. Some of the most common types of neurodiversity include autism, ADHD, dyslexia, or dyspraxia. Jake, I know that you've previously written a blog for us, which was unbelievable. We had really good traction on it about your personal experience about ADHD. Just wondering whether you could perhaps tell us your story, I guess starting from childhood, being undiagnosed, and then through to education, and obviously the most important thing is ADHD in the workplace.
Okay, so I mean, that's the thing. Where do I even start? I was kind of thinking about that. What would be my starting point, on the drive up? I guess the best way that I can start is probably, so back in the 90s, I was born in 93, so in that sort of mid to late 90s period, there wasn't really a lot of, say, research and knowledge around the topic that there is now. Not to say that we still can't improve, which is obviously why we're here. But, we sort of, my mum took me into, usual sort of like GP appointment. back when you could get one. And yeah. So, but she was sort of it was more like behavioural things that I wasn't really getting, not really understanding, like instructions, things like that. More so the behavioural, but when I went in, they did the like tests and everything like that, and they just said, "There's nothing wrong with him. He's a naughty boy." And unfortunately, that is 9 times out of 10 what most children, say from my generation, or our generation rather, would have had. And that was kind of it really until, all the way through childhood. But unfortunately, that kind of moniker sort of stuck really. And then going through school, the usual sort of things like behavioural, like problems at school, emotional dysregulation, that maybe ties in with the behavioural. School reports of things, normal things of, procrastinates, daydreaming. But oddly enough, I was, same thing as in your intro, you said that neurodiversity doesn't mean you're unintelligent. You can still be quite high functioning. So I'm grateful for that and blessed for the fact that I typically was, can call myself or classed under high functioning, because I was good, good academically. I got good grades throughout school. I didn't necessarily need to try hard because I just sort of got it. I could not pay attention, but then a teacher could ask me something and I would just answer it back correctly. I'd know it, sort of thing. So I got good grades all throughout school, but fundamentally inside it wasn't quite right, and a lot of my experiences were around like relationships as well. I really struggled just like with relationships in terms of like friendship groups, maintaining friendships, that sort of thing. Getting bullied as well. But then it was a lot of it, because the experiences I had, they were quite negative and I didn't really have an answer for it and didn't really know. I kind of grew up angry as well. And then it was, I didn't know how to speak about it properly. And even if I did, a lot of it would be, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. That's just kind of so it's a perspectives clash sort of thing.
Quite dismissive. Quite dismissive.
Which is mad when you consider roughly 4% of adults in the UK are diagnosed with ADHD.
But a lot of them, they won't even know it, and you won't even know it because they'll internalise it. Because they would have got to a point where it's like, well, what's the point in communicating how I'm feeling? Because it sounds so silly that no one else will really believe it. Oh, what do you have to be sad about? Or what do you mean you can't sleep? Like, just go to bed early or get up earlier if you're getting late to work.
Which is mental. I mean, do you find that obviously when you go out and you speak one-on-one sessions, either with employees, do they struggle to communicate to you that they're experiencing this?
There's still lots of struggles. There's still and interesting around what you said, right? So if we go back and you think about that school period, right?
So crucial.
That educational
so
piece
crucial.
at an early age, right? Because what you got badged at that time was a naughty boy.
Yeah.
And I was really thinking about that when you said that.
Whether you want to believe it or not, it's like a subconscious thing,
it
right?
It sticks with you.
And it sticks with you. And then eventually you get to a point, well, if this is what I am, then I may as well be that.
I'll embrace it.
Yeah,
almost, right? I'll embrace it. So to your point, I think those experience we have in our childhood, etc. And this is obviously a lot of work we do. So we're talking about the workplace here, and actually a lot of us are going into the workplace with these lifelong experiences. There's lots of progress being made today, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But for certain demographics, generations, you said 93, you were born, I was probably 10 years ahead of that, so we take it back that far as well,
so
right?
Probably even worse. Yeah.
Probably even worse, right? There's a lot of work that needs to be done when people are coming into the workplaces, still today, getting better, but still needs to be done, that is around helping to understand, resolve, process those childhood experiences, right?
Because one thing, if I can just quickly come in, is imposter syndrome. Because I'd had this thing of like, oh, I'm just a naughty boy in that. By the time I'd got into sort of a professional setting, I didn't really believe that I should be there. And it was almost like I was almost in the back of my mind waiting for the axe to fall or for the penny to drop with people and sort of realise that, you know, there's not a lot of substance there.
This guy's a fraud. This guy or girl's a fraud.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. And that is purely shaped from that childhood, of how we've gone from childhood to school to workplace really quick.
It's mental, isn't it? I know that you'll come on to, I guess, probably university life and definitely in terms of your workplace situation and your experience. But it's strange that you mention that obviously you had plus your mum and like professionals saying I was just a naughty boy, like, but it's not even the professionals that really, like your friends or like, I guess in our point where we played football together, your teammates, like I think when we were talking about this months ago when you first helped out with the blog, I remember messaging you saying, I'm really sorry if ever I was joking around on the football pitch or in training, because it's not noticeable to anyone. It's very much a silent.
Yeah. Well, it's masking.
Yeah,
and I've had a few people, you know, at uni conversations, whatever, you know, go, oh, you're faking or whatever. Are you playing a game? And I'm like, what? No, I'm not. I don't. But it looks like that. But essentially, I'm just sort of I was masking the whole time to fit in. Because I'm type 2, right? So I'm hyperactive, impulsive. As you would know. yeah, it makes sense now, doesn't it? But yeah, so sorry, where was I? Oh, I've just forgotten it. Right, this is going to happen a lot, by the way.
It was that masking piece.
Yes, yeah. So I'd be masking, and it would just be like a clash of perspectives sort of thing. But because I've had those experiences throughout school, it just those sorts of social situations getting away from me, and I don't really understand why. I've then come into, say, those interactions basically sort of heightened to, do you see what I'm trying to say? Heightened because of those bad experiences, that I'm almost judging you on what's taking place there, although I didn't realise it at the time. But that's what it was. So to you, that was just a bit of banter, and to be honest, now if I'd known, I'd be like, oh, it's just a bit of flipping banter, do you know what I mean? Like I throw it out all the time, do you know what I mean?
And to be fair, it's not until I realised most recently that, well, 10, 15 years ago, actually, like now that I know that you have ADHD, that I'm like, oh,
yeah,
I shouldn't have been joking.
No, it wasn't even that. I just had a period of, I remember specifically, I think I just said something flipping banter and I booted a ball and just went home after training. It was so stupid. But that was literally just a clash of perspectives, because I'm coming from sort of that perspective, you know, and there's this like invisible thing in the middle that we don't really know what's going on, and that's affecting how we're communicating with each other. But we don't know that. It's
almost a black hole in the middle, isn't it? Like parallel
universe.
Yeah.
Literally that.
And I guess, Lee, from your point of view, is like, how do you also support, I guess, employees that don't understand neurodiversity, that obviously can't understand the employees that are neurodiverse? That's obviously a big issue in the workplace.
Huge issue. I was just listening to yourselves talking about, and that was exactly what was kind of running through my mind, right? Because also, if we put the shoe on the other foot for a moment, all right, and this scenario where you're having that bit of banter, etc., at the moment as well, it kind of feels like for HR leads, employees, leadership, there's a lot going on, right? We've got these teams of neurodiverse talent, teams of people from different cultures, right?
Yeah.
We've got different age demographics, right? So there's all these bits that we have to explore as organisations and people, and it feels like on each of those parties, there's a lot of pressure, it feels like, to say and do the right thing, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is, we can't always cater ourselves as individuals and have the knowledge on every single topic. Yeah, and so that's a little bit of a reality check there in some ways. But what we can do, and what organisations are doing, and what, for example, we work really hard at, is the educational piece, right? That continuous education.
Knowledge is understanding at the end of the day.
Exactly right.
If you don't know, you don't know what you don't know. If you don't know, how can you understand it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And I think it's also important to recognise that whilst we're going through that educational process for yourself, for neurodiverse talent, for other talent in organisations, it's also okay at points not to get things right the first time, as long as we recognise that. Like you, with your experience with that banter,
Yeah.
you've come back and reflected on that because you've had the education and you've understood, actually, maybe I should have done something differently there. But we can't change what happened back then, but we're
100%.
educating and we're learning.
And it feels even weirder to then apologise 15 years later. But like, it's almost like you feel that you have to, you sort of have to acknowledge that, okay, maybe I was wrong, and maybe I didn't act how I should have done. But obviously at that point you don't know the situation.
To be honest as well, don't beat yourself up too much about that, because honestly, it probably was it was something so silly and futile, really. Do you know what I mean? But because I'm so highly strung, because think about that one example. Now times that by however many different
100%.
people over all that time, and so one little thing, fly off the handle with
But
that.
we also,
right?
I mean, we've been talking about educating people who are around neurodiverse talent. There's also, I guess, the fact that there is a lot about educating the person who has it, like
Correct.
who has ADHD, because they don't understand. Like they're either from first diagnosis, or still, as you said, like during the 90s, there wasn't that much information about. But even nowadays, you can get it, but you still then have to learn what your, I guess, I hate to use the word, but I guess what your tics are, or what the minor things are that are sort of making you act within a certain way.
Yeah.
So
that you're definitely correct on that, because essentially I'd gone through childhood up through, adulthood into, sort of early 20s, basically with one perspective on life. And then all of a sudden I've got this thing, and now it's like completely shifted it.
Which is mental, isn't it? So I guess, so if we take it from, we've had your childhood, your education. I know you previously said that it's actually affected your relationship with your mum because of that undiagnosis.
Yeah, unfortunately, and a big theme of a lot of it is, it's almost like not that I regret it or it's wasted, but it's just a sense that things could have been a bit different had I known a lot sooner. That's probably still something I struggle with. I don't necessarily like or enjoy the fact that me and my mum don't have a great relationship. I do wish that was different. But it is what it is, unfortunately, and that's just kind of what you've got to say. Neither of us knew. I know she didn't know. And at the end of the day, as well, again in the 90s, if you think, she young woman, they were definitely treated a lot differently than they are now. So there's that element there. She did what she could, but unfortunately, that did impact us definitely, because I hadn't learned specific behaviours or how to behave, and I think and eventually I think over time, obviously, probably just got a bit too much.
Yeah.
So if we then move on to I guess one of the main focuses that we currently have in terms of what Zest are looking into, what Employmind are looking into, if we move on to your experience in the workplace, which I know previously we've talked about being quite a struggle for yourself in terms of different employment. So if we take it with how your ADHD has affected you in the workplace, I guess both from your personal point of view, but also in terms of the employers that you were working for and them like interacting with you, trying to work out how to help you, essentially, or not help you. I guess
it's difficult because with this conversation, it comes in two parts really. Because you've got the first bit where I was kind of winging life essentially, but wasn't aware, didn't think anything was wrong. Right, I knew I was a bit different, right? But I just thought that was like personality. But then also you've got the diagnosed side. Sorry, I'm fiddling. You've got the diagnosed side where I've got that now, and I've had that. I'm 30 now. I had that literally just before I was about to turn 26. Got diagnosed. Took me about another year and a bit to actually come around to the idea that taking medication was the best thing for me. And basically, since then, I haven't really looked back. It changed my life massively. Basically, it's a stimulant medication. So what then it does is it basically provides that stimulation in the background so that I'm not always like, I'll get bored easily or get distracted easily. Right, I can stay on task and get my work done from start to finish. But then there's also the behavioural, psychological training of that, because I used to be like, right, go to work, you know, very straight down the middle, that sort of thing. My parents, they, I mean, yeah, they had to do a lot to kind of keep me on task and that. But it basically gave me like a generalized anxiety disorder. And I think that's essentially what got me through, as well as obviously wanting to be, having that interest and something to chase is very important. So I had that as well. Sorry, I lost my train of thought a bit.
So we were talking about, I guess, obviously your experience and how it's affected you in the workplace, but obviously also if you look at your, I guess, HR provider, your HR or the companies that you've worked for, how they've managed, or I guess, I know we've spoken before, mismanaged.
So
being neurodiverse.
100%. So when obviously as sports directors, you know, retail job, whatever, I went to O2 and I had a really, really good manager there who was just naturally just a very understanding person. So, you know, you should get some managers where it's like, you know, my way or the highway, or he would want to work with me. He, you know, there'd be times we'd have like arguments or stuff like that, or I wouldn't behave, and obviously I would have to be disciplined in that. But it was hard because we were good friends as well. But you know, Barney, his name was. I used to work with him at O2, and I think he's still there actually in Fareham now. But yeah, no, he was a very, very good manager. Very compassionate, very empathetic. Taught me a lot initially how to be also empathetic. You know, just general soft life skills, that sort of thing. My problem was thinking that every organisation and every person was going to behave like that. I was there for a good 3 years. I wanted to try and take the next step. Unfortunately, I picked the wrong career completely and utterly because I just, it wasn't right for me. It's basically, you know, telephone sales, that sort of thing. The experience I had, and obviously at that age, you know, 21, no one's going to hire a raw writer straight out of the box and pay him a full-time wage.
And at this point, you're still undiagnosed as well.
Yeah, I was still undiagnosed at that point. Yeah, actually, funny. He used to be like, I'd be like hyper in the morning or whatever, and he'd be like, "Oh, are you feeling a bit ADHD today?" Just, do you know what I mean? It's a bit of a sort of a joke, and I'd be like, "Oh no, I'm just like this" or something. But actually. Yeah, the signs were there. But yeah, anyways, I left then, went to like a sales job, and obviously I didn't know at this time, but it was what shocked me was the going from like working in retail and general face to face, and you know, the skills that I'm naturally good at, didn't know I had, to then going into working into an office environment. You take away that face and you're talking to someone over the phone, you know. Yeah, so but because my brain is I can't match up.
You can't see.
I have to see the person for them to like see how I'm like.
Take those cues from there.
That's what I'm saying, because over the phone it's a completely different ball game, 100%. And I definitely underrated that aspect of it. And then because of that, and I'm not doing well at my job, then I'm getting all these pressure from higher ups, and why can't you do this? Then I'm getting angry and annoyed at every little thing. Like if someone hangs up on me, I'm like, do you know what I mean? I've had enough of this. And then obviously they're thinking, oh no, we don't want that in our workplace, but they just think I'm an angry guy. But that's not the case.
Did you ever feel that you could go and have a conversation with, obviously I know you were undiagnosed, but like, did you ever feel that?
No.
Like, if you compare then to now and the same situation happened, would you feel now that you can go and say, I
think it probably would have been a different experience, but then also I probably would have been in a different role. I would have gone for a different role.
Because you've been on that journey and understood as well that actually,
absolutely,
with the way I work and the way I excel, because a big part of this is also, as we said earlier, it's starting to understand in yourself the kind of areas, your strengths, right? And actually all of us have to do that. Yeah. But in your scenario, it's really going a bit deeper to understand that, I guess.
For me, it was a shock, because I'd basically gone through school, college, uni, you know, we mentioned that thing that some neurodiverse can be intelligent. I've got 14 GCSEs, grade C and above, 4 A levels. I didn't do a drop one. I did 4 straight A levels. And then I got a degree and I got a master's degree. Yeah. How can I be struggling like this at work? What what is going on here? Something is not right. So at that point, all that was being made obvious to me was not my strengths, it was actually my glaring weaknesses. But these were things that people were just doing no problem, which I now know is executive function. Yeah, I mean, if I was taking the medication now, then it would be completely different, because I'm sort of more mellow, more chilled, and because I've taken it for a long period of time, even if I wasn't to take it, I would still be better than I was back then without it. But at that time, there was no way I could have gone in for a conversation. Oh, I feel different. Obviously, depression, anxiety, the conversation around them was just starting. But it was, if you've not got like a medical reason or something to say, this is why, the way I'm feeling, or why what's going on, people generally don't have much sympathy.
But even back then, right? If you'd disclosed at that point that you had depression, right? If we think about that, like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever it is. I wonder how confident, even if we have a medical diagnosis back then, we would have been sharing that, because of the way organisations might perceive that as they're just going to be a problem. Disability. They're just going to do the role.
They're just going to be a problem. Oh, they won't turn up. They won't turn up on time, or good luck getting them to be organised. That
even
sort
then,
of thing.
obviously, mental health is a huge stigma subject. It seems with certain men, it's hard enough to get them to talk about their feelings or what they're going through, let alone admitting to your employer who. And obviously, you're going to be nervous about losing your job.
It's a sliding doors moment, isn't it?
You said exactly what you said. You don't want to be admitting your weaknesses. And I think, like, one thing that obviously I haven't touched on, but it's very well known that if you're undiagnosed, I guess, at your age, especially as an adult before the age of 26, there's such a lack of research with adults ADHD that it's hard to actually diagnose the symptoms.
Yes.
Naturally, you don't. It's hard because you don't want to admit to your employer you have a weakness. And you don't want them to think, oh, well, as you said, he's going to be lazy. He's going to kick off if I say something. However, there needs to be a way of... They need to be able to become aware, I guess. And I guess it's educating yourself on what some of the symptoms are so that you can perhaps have conversations. And there doesn't need to be, we think you have ADHD or you're neurodiverse. It's just more of an understanding, I guess.
Correct. Yeah, and I think what's really, if we go, just thinking about, we've said there a few times the word weakness, right? When we're talking about a diagnosis, ADHD, depression, whatever it is.
But reframing
that's part of the problem, right? Because the way I see, and actually, if you look at the word, I was looking at this just before I came in here, the word disability, right? I'm gonna go there for a minute, because when we look at the word disability, and you look at what that can mean, it can mean, unable to perform your role, function as you'd expect, right? Yeah. So if you take that big, broad statement, historically, maybe some of these diagnoses, depression, stress, ADHD, autism, could have been seen as a disability if you take it for what it says, right? But the reality is, it's not, and actually there's a lot of ability, there's a lot of strength in some of the other areas.
And it's just about harnessing.
It's about harnessing those
and minimising the downsides.
And with any other physical illness within the workplace, I break a leg. What does my employer do? They support me, right? They support me. So when we think about a struggle someone has, I'm struggling with stress, depression, I've broken my leg, my wife's off sick, so I need some extra support at the moment to look after my kids.
You'll get 9 times out of 10 you'll get that.
So we need to be looking at putting them all into that kind of category that this is about from an employer's perspective. How do I support you through that? Yeah.
The difficult part with that is naturally is that obviously humans are all different.
Yeah,
we know that. So by extension, ADHD or neurodiversity is going to be all different. So, you might have to maybe do, a little bit work with one individual, maybe someone else's leads a little bit
over
here,
a
little bit less, and that sort of thing. But it is ultimately it's up to employers to judge that for themselves and approach that in the best way possible.
Think about the support piece, right? Support in these areas, but then by doing that, these individuals are excelling and adding so much value to us in these areas, right?
Called reasonable adjustments.
Yes.
In the workplace. It falls under the Equality Act 2010. It is law. So if if I was to go to an employer, look, I have this, what would help me in the workplace would be, say for example, if I'm on the showroom floor and I've got, massive report that I need to get done, I can't, with all these noise, phones pinging off and that. And if it's almost like the more I try and focus on it, the more I'm hearing everything else. So I can basically take my PC and that upstairs and go to a quiet room, whatever, if I need to get that done. If I need to nip out for a quick vape or just 5-minute walk, not a problem. There was even one time, I've gotten better with like lateness and things like that, but there was one time where just slept through all my alarms, everything. I hadn't gone out the night before, promise. Basically I ended up waking up at like 11:30. I was like, oh my God, like, because already I feel so bad about it anyway. I know this isn't great. I can't use this. Oh no, I've got that. I can't use that as an excuse. At the end of the day, I should have done better. But basically they reasonably adjusted in the sense where they're like, fine, cool, we understand this is going to happen every now and then. So they gave me a holiday day. Yeah. So I used a day of holiday. So fine. It's kind of a compromise really. And so I didn't get, in trouble. Obviously they can't happen again.
Well, that's brilliant. But that's the part of that understanding.
And honestly, but now what has that done for me? Right. Well, that's made me more committed and more loyal to that
small
company.
adjustment, that small
100%.
gesture almost.
Yeah. And if employers, I guess, are educated on this and they're open to supporting, as you said, it could be something physical, you could break your leg, and they're always going to support you. But if they're going to support you there, it's the whole attraction retention sort of thing, isn't it? Like 100%.
So there was one thing now that one of the things I said earlier about O2 when I was there, very, very good culture, very, very fair culture, moderate but fair culture as well, to everybody. And one of their sort of things in their sort of like training campaigns things is, sort of how the values we uphold as a company. And one of them, it was, basically finding win-wins and mutual connections based on trust. So doing something like that, they trust that it's not going to happen again. It's just a one-off. They've met me halfway. Everyone's happy. Nobody loses. And I'm like, yes, maybe want to work harder for them. Do you know what I mean? I went in on the Saturday over the weekend. I needed to get some stuff done. Didn't bother me.
I love
because
that,
because I know that
which is fantastic.
If I slip up, they'll pick me up and vice versa.
And that's starting with trust, right? And
Literally
that's a really great bit.
Literally that.
Some organisations aren't there. They're not starting with trust, right? And there's other deep-seated issues maybe there around persona, past experiences, coming from leadership within those organisations. But if you can start with trust, then that's where you can build these healthier relationships with your staff.
100%.
There will be some staff that, maybe that doesn't work for, right? Where that's not the right relationship, and that's okay for both parties then to part ways. But if you start there, that's exactly the point you should be starting at.
As we've said, it's all about the educational piece. Before I open a question to both of you, Leah, do you want to touch on EmployMind, provider that can offer key support for employees and employees? What sorts of avenues could a company expect or implement, I guess, by partnering with yourself?
Yeah, so we do, as I said at the kind of start here, a couple of kind of the key areas, I guess, that we work on. Educational work, and I'll dig into that in a moment, and then also the one-to-one kind of core support. And a great question you asked earlier when we were talking about like educating employers is also around educating and supporting the employees, right? So as an example, through our one-to-one core support, we're able to connect people in the workplace, and actually maybe I'll just refer to people because that could be an employee, it could be a senior leader, it could be a team leader, it could be neurodiverse talent, it could be someone working remotely overseas who's struggling with loneliness. We've got all these whole raft of different reasons people need support, right? So one way we help is by connecting those individuals with the best placed person from our pool of therapists, counsellors, coaches, to give them the support they need. And that support might be to help them through tough times personally. They might
Because the thing is, with our kind of brain times, there will be a lot of tough times personally.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
On the whole, we will tend to have more than the average neurotypical, let's say.
100%, and that's reflected sometimes in some of the stats around unemployment levels, right, with neurodiverse talent. I think neurodiverse talent have disproportionately high unemployment, between kind of 30 to 40%, right? So completely right. So through our pool of specialists, we've not only got qualifications and skill sets in terms of the staff that can deliver that support to you or to others, but we've also got people with lived experience, right? People that perhaps have got ADHD, autism, but can then, through their experience, through their skill sets, help to give you like tools that you can use every day to better communicate, manage your day, manage your routines, those kind of bits. And then when it comes to managers, C-suite, we can take also some of the burden from them, their support, trying to support their staff, but maybe they don't understand specifically how to support this individual. Whereas actually being matched with one of our coaches, therapists, counsellors, that can also give them in that one-to-one fashion that ability to understand, develop themselves as well, to have that conversation.
The education bit about even so, you know, educating me on my own traits and things like that is very, very key. As well as the employment issue as well with ADHD. A lot. 9 times out of 10, I'm just drawing that figure from somewhere, don't quote me on it. It's more like we will go through a lot more sort of job losses than, say, your neurotypical. I've been through that, and that is literally what sort of made me get down the GP and be like, nah, something is wrong, critically wrong. I was like, how can I have gone through all this education and applied myself and done all this? You know, I've done everything that they told me to do, but I'm still struggling with this. And I basically ended up sort of being on a bit of a job loss cycle, and it was almost kind of, it became subconscious almost. But a lot of it was because I was kind of feeling bad about those bad experiences. I was carrying that emotional baggage into the next one. You know,
setting yourself up to fail
essentially, subconsciously. And so I went through a period of about 6 jobs in a couple of years, which I'd been at Sports Direct 4 and 023. I was like, what the hell is happening here? So that essentially got me down the GP, and I got diagnosed with anxiety and depression first, and then eventually, once they sort of rushed me through, because they could see that the education stuff was there, so something was critically wrong. So that, having the job loss thing, and then there's also there's all the cloudy stuff around that. So, you know, I didn't have regular money coming through. I had things to pay for. I had my rent and all that stuff. I ended up, you know, having quite a high credit card bill because of it, and therefore I'm financially stuck. You know, and then because I'm not, you know, seeing my friends as much or out, and, you know, they're hearing, oh, he's lost another job as well. You lose the respect of your peers. It slowly chips away at you and your psyche. Eventually, what ended up happening, I was having a full-blown identity crisis at 24, 25. You know, and then they say don't compare, but it is so difficult not to. And you're seeing, you know, your peers go off into the world. I know they're not going to show me all their wins and losses, but I can bet you they were doing a dance site better than I was at that time. And it was tough because I felt like, well, yeah, I should have been there, but hey, it is what it is. Everything happens for a reason. I needed to go through all of that to get to sort of where I am now, actually.
Which is the main thing, as you said, it's that experience of going through it. Lee, why do you think employee benefit providers like yourselves, like EmployMind, are so important for educating businesses? What technology do you use to support this as well?
So I want to just rephrase employee benefits when we talk about this a little bit, if that's okay. I know Zest do fantastic work with, you know, an array of services providers they've got as well. But when it comes specifically to well-being, mental health, I don't think we should be badging anything we do, Zest or EmployMind, as an employee benefit, right? Because actually, this doesn't just benefit the employee, it benefits the employer as well by providing this kind of support. It can help them create inclusive, all the things I said at the start, right? Inclusive, healthy, happy cultures and environments, which ultimately benefits the employee and the employer, because everyone wins from that scenario, right? We see the performance, we see the growth, we see the retention, we see the attraction, all those great things. So I think we should stop viewing it as an employee benefit. The other reason I think we should stop viewing it as an employee benefit as well is because actually it's just like the right thing to do.
Yes.
Right, quite simple. Let's take away all the stuff about everything else, performance and all those bits.
It's just the right and moral thing to do.
The right thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm a dad, right? I've got 2 young girls. I want them to go into an organisation where their employer is just working based on trust, like we mentioned earlier, as a core value.
Doing the right thing.
And just
that
doing
was
the
another
right thing.
core value of O2's. Oh, sorry, I keep coming back
No,
to that.
but I think it's great.
There's something I kind of definitely sort of internalized as like 4 pillars sort of type thing, right? And it really, honestly, it shocked me. Nothing prepared me for the fact that that was an exception to the rule rather than the rule. And because there was one, I was working for this sort of social media agency, obviously just being diagnosed.
Yeah.
I'm learning about myself. There was a document, I think I sent you, ADHD Foundation Scotland.
Yes, yeah.
It goes through literally everything, but it's packaged in a way that it is informative for the employer. And I tried to frame it as this is going to help you understand me, get the best out of me.
Yeah.
That's how I framed it as. But unfortunately, one of the guys, he was absolutely on board. He's very, very supportive. Couldn't speak highly enough of him. But it was, he was the junior to his senior sort of thing, the CEO at the time. And but I gave him the document and everything like that, and just didn't get any. It just was not taken on board, like whatsoever in the slightest.
Because it's often,
and it really shocked me. It shocked me, honestly. I couldn't believe it. Because imagine going through all of that trouble. I know they're not going to get it. It's a different perspective. Going through all that trouble and all this pain and for bad experiences, and they're not all bad. There was some good, obviously. Yeah. To then go through all of this, get diagnosed, taking the medication. I understand myself. This is great. Like I could finally fulfill my potential. I can get on with my life and all that kind of stuff. And then give it to someone and be like, look, there you go. I've done all this research, so you don't have to. And they just go, shh. That's tough to take.
Yeah, 100%. So I guess a question for both of you then, and it would be good to get different angles on this. What support do you think businesses should put in place for their staff, especially when you consider it will have a huge impact on what I talked about earlier, talent retention. What things do you think businesses should put in place?
It's difficult because there's not going to be, one size fits all answer. Yeah. That's 100%. Probably, and I think if employers were able to firstly understand that before understanding everything else, it would make their life a lot easier. We have, a fire person, like, in this building,
fire
actually,
warden,
and you'll have a first aider, right? Yeah. I think I think something that could potentially be beneficial. I know a lot of companies have started to bring in like mental health officers and stuff like that. But rather than just having a mental health officer, but you'd almost have like a first aider, but for, essentially mental health and neurological differences. Someone who's trained in that can potentially spot that for the people who know it and can help and guide and whatnot. But then also for the people who come in and they might not necessarily know or understand. Obviously, there's going to be a conversation ahead about how you would approach that. That's obviously way above me, but something along those lines, I think would be a good place to start. Because when I went to I'm working as a marketing executive for a small dealership, absolutely love it. The people are great. I really got lucky considering my last experience. But at that point, I didn't want to write down on the employment contract that I've got ADHD, but you have to legally, you have to. Because obviously, if I then don't and they found that out, it's a breach of contract and all that kind of stuff,
obviously,
right?
You said there's also law covering you.
Yes, there is.
If you say to them you have ADHD, you are covered by that law.
But what they did have, which was very really beneficial, they had someone working in sort of HR, finance, accounts sort of thing. Basically, again, has children who are on the autistic spectrum or have ADHD. One has ADHD. So she has very first-hand experience of it. And when she saw that, because she would file the contract, and that she basically called, my sales manager, the person who hired me, explained from her perspective, and things that might benefit, and he to be fair play to the guy, he absolutely took that on board massively. And
Really
do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yeah,
really
which is brilliant.
proactive.
And I guess
100%.
we've got that from an employee perspective.
Yeah.
But what sort of, and I know that you obviously work with employees, but what, if you were to say, if I were to say, what core principles do you think employees should be looking at to help support colleagues? What would you suggest there should be?
Well, what I want to say first of all is thank you for teeing up mental health first
You're
aid.
welcome.
We didn't speak about this before at all, actually, so I'm really impressed that, and we genuinely didn't, right? But we deliver mental health first aid England, right, as part of what we do, which is exactly what you touched on there. It's having those trained individuals that put themselves forwards, right, and say, actually, I want to be that first point of contact, to either proactively, like this lady you just spoke about who noticed this, you'd completed down on your form, these areas. Yeah. She's noticed that, she's been proactive.
Yeah.
Right? Really great. And that's what MHFA is about as well, right? It's being proactive, spotting the signs of someone that might be struggling, working differently, having empathetic conversation, and then signposting to professional support where needed, right?
Yeah.
And interestingly,
signposting is all you can do, because sometimes a lot of people, when you tell them these things, always say, look, have you considered that, you might be positive? A lot of times it's in a general acceptance. Some people, I wasn't necessarily ready to hear that. Something might be different with me. It took me a long time to get on board with that. So that
once you do accept it, then I guess it
your life is so much easier. Yeah.
Do you both think that? I mean, every time that you join a new company, your employer will always give you your starting pack. There will always be an employee handbook in there. Do you think there should actually be something in the employee handbook for every company that explains or just openly says that this is our support, or this is who you can speak to?
Yeah,
100%. It should be part of onboarding. There should be policies, right, that we can easily access. When we think about neurodiversity as well, it's really important. So a lot of the work we do and what organisations are doing, so this is really great, is also looking at their processes, right? So this is something organisations should do. They should be thinking about how are we attracting neurodiverse talent, right? So therefore, how are our job specs, how do they come across? How do our job adverts come across? Are we making them accessible for people with dyslexia? So have we just got written job specs going on a website or whatever, or are we doing videos, right? Again, to help with that accessibility. Yeah. So they should be looking at all of these bits when they think about processes. They should be thinking about job roles, right?
Definitely,
They should be. They should really be thinking about their job roles and thinking, actually, again, how do we make this job role accessible? Not just for neurodiverse talent, but for all those other unique individuals, because all of us are unique, right? Yeah. So when we think about then, take that a step further, and we think about benefits in the workplace, right? Again, as you rightly said earlier, we have to really be thinking about how do we meet the unique needs of our people, which can be quite daunting, especially if we're like
trying to arrow down on a needle in a haystack.
When we're a global organisation, and you think we're a global organisation, offices in all these different countries, people in these different countries. We got social barriers over here, cultural barriers. HR, that's a real quite a challenge. So we have to be respectful of that as well, right? It's not easy. But they should be thinking about all those things and thinking through the lens of how do we meet the individual needs of our people, right? There's other little things we can do in the workplace aside from benefits as well. ESGs, right? So employee support groups, in the organisation. So why not let's have an employee support group for our male demographic, right? Yeah. Perhaps, dads on the school run as an ESG, right? Because again, I'm a dad on the school run. Sometimes I struggle with, oh my goodness, I've got to drop the kids off to school today. I've got a meeting at 9. All those kind of bits form part of anxiety, stress that make up our day, right? So we have a group for that. We have a group for our neurodiverse talent. You maybe even break it out further with group for autism, group, depending on the size of the organisation. And so those are a really good way to, again, provide that internal peer-to-peer support with like-minded people with lived experiences, but also really important for the organisation to be able to then use those channels as a communication method into the business to guide on what's important to us. And that's when you can start building out then your benefit package with relevant tools. EmployMind, you've got, is it Margie, which is financial well-being, really important tool.
Yeah, because honestly, if I'd have known that I had ADHD a lot sooner, I just would not have got a credit card. Just simple as that. I just wouldn't have got a credit card. Because what impulsive spending, lack of impulse control, that sort of thing.
Again, it just reverts back to all that sort of education piece. I mean, before we wrap up, I just want to go through a couple of questions that we've been asked to potentially cover on the podcast. So between the two of you, and I know obviously EmployMind provide that sort of educational support, but are there any educational articles or sort of training material that you could find online that you think is really good for neurodiversity?
ADHD Foundation Scotland is a good one, first and foremost. They've got really, really decent guides on there as well. There's also another one, but I can't quite remember what it is. That's the thing. There's a few that I even know of, but that information is just not out there.
Yeah,
that's the hard thing. You literally have to go on and Google it and try and find it yourself. I thought when I got diagnosed, I was going to get access to, obviously medication, psychological, therapists and stuff to undo the damage that's been done, all that kind of stuff. And it's not like that. The information's not out there. You've got to try and find it yourself and
I think there's also a challenge there as well with information, right? So you've named a great resource, and there's actually lots of charities.
There's loads of others.
Lots of great, charities that can provide this kind of support, right? Maybe we'll throw out some links after the session, something 100%. Like that, right? I think that's a great idea. But I also think there's a challenge on the flip side because there is so much information, and you spoke about noise earlier, like even in your work environment with ADHD, that noise can be really challenging, right? So sometimes that noise of information from all these different sources can be difficult to filter through as well, right? So I think we've got this great scenario where there's actually more information than ever before, but at the same time that can create that noise and can be quite difficult to muddle
how do
through,
we filter
right?
it down?
Yeah, to really relevant information that's relevant to me.
Site-wise, I've just thought of some others. This is what happens. Right, so it's ADD, but Attitude Mag, and you've got ADHD magazine as well. Those are the two main ones, and I follow them on like Instagram and Twitter and whatnot. But they'll throw out little tidbits every now and then. So rather than me trying to literally try and research stuff, I'll scroll through and I might see something, and I'll learn something just then and there, sort of thing about myself, and I'll be like, oh, okay, that's why I do this, or that's why this has happened. And so a lot of these times, social media can also be a good tool as well. But those two specifically, Attitude
Social media
Mag
does have its benefits.
Yes, it can do. There's a really good one called ADH Doers on Instagram, and they do things like free ebooks and stuff like that. So there are some tools out there. It's just trying to find them. Yes.
So I guess our next question, what are the benefits and challenges of disclosing your ADHD diagnosis in the workplace?
Let me start with the challenges. The challenges is first, you've just the mental mounting of actually getting over it, right? Because it's like I said earlier in the podcast, it's a sliding doors moment, right? It's almost like you build this up in your head. That as soon as you tell that person this one bit, it's going to completely change the way they look at you. It's going to completely change how your experience is going to pan out. Are you willing to take that risk? That's what it comes down to. That's the thing.
Risk.
And it's luck of the draw who you get.
It should never be a risk either.
I know. And I never thought there would be. But the reality is there is, unfortunately. From my experience, obviously I can't say that for everybody else. I said to that, I told you that one I gave that document to. I gave them all of that stuff, all the information, and it was just not taken on board whatsoever. But then equally, as I've told you, my previous role that I've come to, my current role that I've gone into from that, I've told them, but then they've done all the legwork without me even asking for it or saying I needed it. And the result is, I've nearly been there a year, absolutely smashed it. I've got our little company, to an awards thing for the first time ever. Even like Auto Trader have come down and said like what we're doing on the marketing side of things is like pretty much disrupting it. So and it's all come from them. Because I've told them, and luckily they've done the work and to kind of meet me halfway, and everyone wins at the end of the day.
So I think there's
But it is luck of the draw who you get, unfortunately.
and that's what you want to avoid, though, that luck of the draw, isn't it? We want to try and there shouldn't be a risk.
No.
There shouldn't be luck of the draw. The reality is today, though, still that there's a lot of work to be done, because also if we come back to us as people, we're all at different stages around our education, so we have to have some kind of I say give some grace for that. We're all at different stages of education, but organisations, what they can do and what more and more are doing,
at least try.
Exactly. At least try. Start putting in place start with your policies. So looking at your job roles, looking at those kind of bits, trying to make sure your environments are as accessible as possible at as a starting point. Demonstrate that your organisation is going to be as accessible as possible, so that when you're applying for a role, you can start to get that feel straight away. Actually, maybe there's not so much risk associated to this one, because I can see from their onboarding process, their policies, their recruitment process, all those initial employee experience touch points, right? That actually this seems to be an organisation that is maybe not there, but trying and putting in the steps, right? Yeah. And then when you go into the organisation as well, you can see that there's that continuous education and continuous development. So I think those are the things that more organisations are doing, and all organisations can do today.
Right? Absolutely. 100%.
And I guess let's just finish one more question. What are some simple ways colleagues can actively support a neurodiverse co-worker with ADHD, or I guess just neurodiverse in general, on a daily basis?
Employees, I'd say colleagues. I think just...
Let's assume that they perhaps aren't they're not aware of your situation, or even if they are, even if you made them aware.
Just being a bit understanding, having a bit of empathy, really. Not sympathising with them, just trying to see from their side of view, sort of thing, and don't be too put off if what they say might seem a bit odd to you, because it's perfectly normal for them. Because I've had some things where I'll be like, oh, I do, and people are like, oh, that's weird, but they're coming at it. That's from a closed off, not understanding point of view, because they're like, oh, that's weird. I'd never do that. So you're an oddball. Do you know what I mean? Whereas rather than
normal,
exactly. Rather than being like, oh, okay, bit odd, but I could see how that would work for you, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? That's exactly.
Empathy is huge.
Empathy
in our conversations. Active listening. Right, is another hugely important skill that I think all colleagues should try to have. Right, it's just listening to people, but really actively listening, understanding, reflecting, replaying back conversations can really help in these situations.
If they sort of maybe same thing with the questions are the answers, right? So maybe asking the right questions. What. If they go, oh, I've got this, by the way, and be like, oh, well, is there any sort of, are there any prompts you need? Like, do you forget things? Or, just asking about it, how it necessarily affects them, and if there's anything that they could do that could help them. I think maybe being open to maybe sort of reading up on that this PDF document, ADHD Foundation Scotland, I recommend it all the time. It's so good. 7 pages, got everything there, really easy to read. Be like, is there anything that I could potentially read or something maybe that could help me understand? Can you send me something? Because I've done that,
which is brilliant. I guess another thing is to make sure, don't feel that you have to stand off or not engage with that person because you don't want to tread on eggshells. I guess is the phrase, but by taking the time to educate yourself, you're more likely to be able to then feel confident, and not that you should ever really feel uneasy talking to someone, but obviously it's very easy to come from a situation where you don't perhaps understand that person,
because a lot of it is literally perspective, because it's because they say a neurotypical mind can't comprehend possibly how the little tics or the little behaviors or why they do those things, right? In the same way that I can't comprehend getting up on time and going to work and not having maybe like a behavioural issue or taking tablets or something like that. I couldn't comprehend a life not doing that. So just sort of being open to different experiences, different ways of thinking, and not being so quick to judge, just sort of being, you know, if it is a bit strange to you, you know, that's perfectly fine. But just sort of being like, oh, okay, well, that's normal for you then. No problem. It doesn't bother you. Why would you care?
Comes
Do
back
you know
to
what I mean?
O2, comes back into the conversation as a starting point with two things: trust and empathy.
Yeah.
Right. Come into the conversation trusting that, you know, we're both here having a conversation, trying to find the right way forward. Right. And then viewing that conversation empathetically from the other
Usually you find as well, because it's quite a vulnerable conversation as well, if it goes in like how we've discussed it in that right way, actually it can make that connection between two colleagues a lot stronger.
100%. That's where the performance in that business starts to grow, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right?
100%. Listen, gents, absolutely wonderful to have you both on.
Thank you.
Really appreciate
Thank you very much.
you spending your time.
I do apologise if I interrupted every now and then.
not at all.
It's brilliant.
Lost my train of thought.
No, listen, I really appreciate you both coming on. I think it's really a really important subject, which, as we've said, especially with adults, there's such a lack of research, and it's something that hopefully employers are looking to educate themselves more on.
I'm very pleased that we've had this discussion today, and companies such as yourself, Zest, they've really been proactive in trying to get this out there, and I hope this is the start of a positive trend in the workplace. Because it can only benefit everybody at the end of the day.
And naturally, we also know that we have EmployMind to support with all mental, physical well-being and support for employees and employees alike. Listen, everybody, thank you very much for joining A Pinch of Zest, and hopefully see you next time.